This is what we need to do. This is going to bring that school to the next level.
That's Thinkering. This Thinkering process is going to be really transformational to all subjects that we're talking about.
The value of the Alliance is it's a thinking collective. Now we have a greater understanding amongst everyone. And that's not what's common in schools.
I always tell our students this can set you apart, make you stand out, something to remember you by. It's an opportunity to share. It's win-win all around.
I think the biggest part of what we do are the humans that we work with on the other side of that, right? Really see the human impact, the way that they're interacting and working with their community.
It really does have to flip. You should be able to think about that as your hero's journey, to be able to go, this is how I was able to overcome.
And I feel like continuing that mission is really important.
Hey everybody, welcome to Thinkering Minds. Today we have Simon Yu, co-founder and CEO of Daysee. Daysee is an app that's all about engagement and connection, solving the big issue we have as parents with children. What went on in your day? We want to know. That wall inevitably comes up. So Daysee is built to help us celebrate the day, empower and engage with our children, with our teachers as a family unit, a community. Simon, we're happy to have you with us. Please introduce yourself and cover anything that I left out.
Yeah. Hey, Jim. Thanks a lot for having me. It's an honor to be here and obviously reaching out to a lot of educators and just people that care about what we're building in the space, right? I think that's something that's really critical as anyone building for educators. We all probably are very similar, right? For the most part, it's like we truly care about what we're doing and the impact it has. But no, Daysee, I think you summed it up perfectly. At its core it's an app that gives teachers the simplest way to show families what happened at school that day, right? And we obviously do it in a very safe environment where it's only for families in that classroom to see, but it's really about celebrating all those moments that make learning joyful, right? So
Yeah, I love it. The first time I downloaded the app and looked at it, the install and getting it set up was seamless. And then I looked around and it's like very, very clean. And it feels like you all had a mantra about maybe keeping what people are familiar with and what works, and then not having any unnecessary extra clutter to take away from that.
I think that's one of the things in education, right? Is there's a lot of software being sold to school districts that's being forced upon teachers. And for us, we went with a very different approach is, what are the tools that teachers are familiar with, right? Obviously social media, right? Which is a good and a bad thing, right? But how do we take the coolness, the innovation in social media, but apply it privately for teachers in their classrooms, right? So we really looked at it and said, what can we strip away and just focus on the core feature, which is about empowering teachers to celebrate those moments, right? That ultimately create a connection at home, right? For parents to talk to their kids about what happened at school that day, which we know family engagement is a critical component of student success in the long run, right? Students perform better, right? Families have better connection with the teachers and vice versa. So
Yeah, that's one of those interesting issues that we all experience. We've all been that student who's been asked about their day and not wanted to talk about it. We've all been, like in that situation where we're curious about someone else's day and not getting the engagement that we want. So we all understand that there's a bridge that needs to be built here. How are you all looking at the quantitative data that backs up this idea that we all see and know needs to be addressed? How does that play into the picture?
quantitative as in like just the day.
Yeah, just like hard data, because like we all feel it in our gut. We all see it and experience it every day. There's needs to be that bridge. Is there even a way to integrate like hard data into?
Oh, I think there actually is, right? And something that we were very careful about in the beginning was we're not building social media, right? Like obviously it feels like an Instagram story for teachers to communicate with their families about what happened at school, right? So we didn't want to build in a lot of these features that social media had in terms of like views and likes and all that. But we also add that back in to show, just show teachers, right, the effect of what your content actually does, right? That families actually watch this stuff and engage with their kids about what happened, right? And one of the best things I have is just from, our cohort of beta teachers is teachers coming back to us and saying like, hey, we had back to school conferences, right? We've never had a better response back from the parent side in terms of like how it went, instead of talking about all the things that we're doing, right? They have a higher baseline. They have a higher knowledge of what we did, and we can talk more about what we're doing going forward for the most part, right? But obviously, like I think down the road as we scale and we get bigger, I think it'd be really interesting to see like what does this ultimately do in terms of family engagement, and what does it do for student outcomes in the long run too. So
Yeah. I'd like to learn more about your story of how you got there. I know you started off in the world of like finance.
yeah, I had
How
a
do
very
you go from finance to like, you know, parent student engagement?
I I think it needs to go even further back. I grew up, I'm originally from the Metro Detroit area. I grew up in Michigan. I'm first generation. And the premise of Daisy really came back to my own like personal experience as a student. My parents, being immigrants, they work 7 days a week and they miss out on most of my, experiences growing up. I was very fortunate where I had amazing teachers, right, that would used to take photos and develop them and actually give it to my parents, right? I don't know if you could see this, but these are like a lot of these core memories I have. And it's one of those keepsakes that my parents cherish the most, right? Most importantly, I'll never forget how it made me feel as a student that I know my parents were there, right? And how it made them feel seen and connected back to our classroom, right? And, fast forward through time, right? I eventually started my career working on Wall Street. I worked in investment banking, I worked in private equity, investing in companies, and I ultimately left that career to go be a volunteer teacher in South Africa. I spent a little time in Zimbabwe and Madagascar. I went there, funny enough, thinking I was going to be, coaching soccer, but those kids are much better at soccer than me. I became a glorified gym teacher instead, right? At the core, what I saw there was just, the so many amazing things happen in the classroom that goes unseen. And you fast forward to today, right? With social media and all those things, where we see so much. We can see our friends, we can see influencers, celebrities. I mean, if you care about those things, but at its core, right? What are those tools available today for teachers and for parents, right? Because I think that's a genuine connection that matters every single day for parents is what did my child do at school? Right? And how does it ultimately drive a better relationship between the parent and the teacher as well too, right? But most importantly, creating a tool that doesn't seem like work for teachers, right? That feels much more effortless in that way. And that, going back to what you were saying before, we designed Daisy around simplicity, obviously like privacy and all those other things. But I didn't want a million things cluttered into the app, right? At the core, it's about a quick way for teachers to capture and share something that they see for families to see at home, but more importantly, to have a conversation about it at the end of the day.
Yeah. One of the fascinating things is I feel like I call them 2 a.m. moments. Everybody I talk to ends up having that 2 a.m. moment where it's like, I got to do something different. I have to be the person to, make this change that I want to see. What was your 2 a.m. moment where you said, okay, like I've got to go build this app?
I think it's just finding purpose. It's around family connection, right? When people ask me, what is Daisy about at the end of the day? Yes, it's about like enhancing education in a way, driving student outcomes. But most importantly, it's around human connection, right? And for me, I'm building Daisy for, obviously when I was a student, when I was a volunteer teacher, and now that I'm a parent myself, right? And when I think about what's going to be true in the future, right, despite everything going on in technology, right? I think right now is an overwhelming time for like, I mean, not just for schools, but everyone else in general, with AI, generative AI, and all those other like tools coming the way. It's something that's going to be true is that parents will always care about their child's day, right? And number two is that teachers should always be at the center of the classroom, right? That they should be there, right? And obviously, like I know it could be controversial and how you talk about personalized learning and all those other things, which I think you're going to use AI to augment learning. But I think there should be a teacher at the center of it. When I think back to like the person I became, it's because I had an amazing teacher really shaping up that foundation of who I was going to become down the road, right? I think we
Right.
will always need that.
Yeah, an AI model will never be able to go above and beyond. It will always be able to do exactly what it's meant to do and nothing more than that.
Yeah.
Unless it's the end of the world, then it might go above and beyond. But the human element, that's required there for somebody to see a kid realize they can make a difference. They don't have to work within the fences they're told to work
Yeah.
within. They can go and do something bigger and better. I think we've all been impacted by an educator in that form. And those are the ones that really stand out and make a difference. For you as a founder, what was the moment where you realized that you couldn't wait for somebody else to build something like this?
think I just truly care, right? I truly care about this problem that we're solving for, and the human connection was I started seeing, I'm a parent now, but when I first started, there was another version of Daisy called U Day before. And that's a whole separate company. But when I first started that, I started seeing all my friends become parents. I started seeing everyone else I knew become parents. And at the time, everyone loved like social media, and for the most part, people still do today. But I care a lot about what is purposeful tech, right? I always said, I didn't create Daisy as a YouTube alternative for screen time, right? It's a way for parents to watch this, to have an offline conversation, right, with their kids, right? And as I started to see my friends becoming parents and knowing that that was going to be on my plan at some point, right? I want this to exist for that moment in time too, right? And I'll tell you this, like, as an aside to what we're doing, I've been using Daisy as a way to communicate with my family, my in-laws, my own parents about my daughter's day, right? Because at the core, every single day, they're like, hey, how was Harper's day? What did she do today? How was it? And it's a wonderful way to form that connection at home, right? Between families, right? And then now that my daughter's at daycare, I see that even more. It's like when she comes home, it's like you want to talk to her, right? She's at the age where we can really, really formally have a conversation. But down the road, it's like I can see like asking them like, hey, I saw you played out with the sprinkler. Say, what did you do during circle time, right? What did you learn here? And that's the core of what Daisy is, right? It's not about making sure that teachers capture everything, right? It's not about that at all. It's more about quality over quantity. It's more about each story should help trigger some sort of conversation at home and that help inspire it. That's how we kind of prompt it, right? If it's one story a day, if it's 10 story a day, our hope is that it just brings families closer to the classroom.
Yeah, it's like a beautiful mission, and it's funny that you bring up the having to translate your child's day for, in-laws and family members and stuff like that, trying to confer what happened, and now you're put in that same position as the child. What did you do today? Now, Simon, you're in that same seat. Well, what did your child do today? And Daisy allows you to answer that question like
Jim, do you know
authentically.
what's even cooler for me is, and I also see it is at the end of the day, video and photos, they're universal, right? My dad doesn't speak any English,
Mm.
right? And that's the same thing from like, when I was a kid and my teacher handed my parents this. They don't need to read messages about what happened. They can see, right? If they're starting to, if it's kids measuring, like learning to measure using blocks, right? I know right away this is probably a math class. They're learning how to measure objects, right? And that's more fun things that I've seen from this. It's teachers are so creative in their own ways, right? And a lot of time that magic that's created in the classroom is not translated back home, right? It's not seen by
Mm.
families, right? But you need a tool that's, obviously like private for classrooms, but super simple for teachers to use, right? And at the core, that's really what we believe in. It's a universal truth that I believe. When I talk to investors and anyone else to get them excited about it, I talk about how massive of a problem this is, right? If you think about every single day, 1.6 billion kids go to school, right? They spend 7 to 8 hours away from their parents, right? How do you give some of that time back to them, right? At the same time, how do you also celebrate, appreciate all the hard work and the impact that teachers put into making their day special, right? So,
Yeah. When you think about it, it's really a tool that actually effectively helps districts combat burnout and improve retention rates for educators. Because if the teachers feel seen, the parents see that magic, the effort they put in for the children, and they're able to communicate that, the administration is able to see how much effort the educators putting in. It really solves so many problems with just a simple thing, which is just removing communication barriers and being a bridge for open, authentic dialogue. And
yeah,
it solves so much.
I think it is dropping down to the most basic form, right? And I'm very careful where I don't know if you want to discuss this, but like, there's a lot of communication tools, a lot of classroom management tools in the space, right? They do a million different things, right? And we look at them as friends and not competitors, just the same way where we don't use one marker for everything, right? We believe the same holds true for the tools that teachers have access to. For us, it's just the best place to celebrate those moments of joy in your classroom, right? And the way we do it is it's the way I'm not sure if it's communicated through, but the way it plays out on the family side is that they play each day and they see the day happening from beginning to end and like kind of like highlight reel of what's going on, right? So as a parent, I can sit down with my child, and we can watch their day play out right? But it should spark that conversation at home about, hey, I saw you're learning about the solar system. Tell me more about X, Y, and Z, right? But more importantly, it helps reinforce the learning that took place, right? Because I mean, as adults, I think we also forget what we did each day too. But if all of a sudden I go into your calendar and said, hey, Jim, what was this meeting that you had with Simon, right? Like you're going to be much more engaged and we're going to have a full conversation about it versus like, hey, Jim, how's your day? Good. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's like a fascinating thing also is I didn't realize until we started talking, but the young child, the student is that essentially the communications director for that relationship between the parent and the school, oftentimes the educator. And uh we leave it up to this child who might be 6, 7, 8,
yeah,
10, 12 to communicate what this 40-year professional has put into work
yep,
and this special magic
yep.
they brought into the classroom, and then deliver that in a way that a parent's going to take it and understand and be enthusiastic, not miss anything. And that child could honestly typically care less. They want to go outside and play soccer or go play a
Yep.
video game or go play an instrument, have some fun. It's the parents and the educators who want that connection. And by
Jim, you hit the nail on its head right there, right? And we say that as kind of like an afterthought for Daisy, right? Is it really celebrates that daily impact that teachers have in classrooms,
yeah,
right? This shouldn't feel like work, and that's why we've designed it the way that we did. It should be very empowering. We even built in like a lot of these like fun features where every day we send teachers to sing what we call like daily joy, just words of affirmation, just to like lift their spirits, right? We understand right now is a very tough time. And I never say Daisy is a solution for everything. We're not the savior, but we're doing our very tiny part to shine that light back onto teachers in a positive way. And teachers are, and I'm very like, I always say this to teachers. I'm like, it's up to you what you want to share at the end of the day, as much or how little, right? There's no requirement of like, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's whatever you're comfortable with, right? We have some teachers that can celebrate 10 plus stories a day, and we have some teachers that celebrate one or two, and for them they're like, that checks a box for me, right? It shows a very joyful moment in my day that I hope that the kids go home and they talk about that one moment of learning, right? But that's also, I'm sure, like a lot of people that you've interviewed, right? It never underestimate the creativity of teachers, right? They find such creative ways to use this, that always just blows my mind, when they share it with me or they tell me, hey, I use it for X, Y, and Z reason, or how I do it, or how they kind of hack my own app to do the things that they want to do with it, right? So,
yeah, they are very good at working with limited things and squeezing every little bit of what they need out of it. That's what teachers are really, really good at. Strapped budgets, limited resources, and loads of desire to make impact and change. When I One of the things that you touched on earlier, and I want to go back to, is that idea of extended family and bringing them in
mm,
and how
yep,
powerful that is. And I wonder, that thought made me continue and think beyond the educators, there's mental health professionals in
oh yeah,
schools.
yep,
And, I see on the family side this big, beautiful connection where parents and children start talking more, and then relatives become more engaged and
yep,
invested. And that removes barriers and builds bridges, and home life improves. And then
yep,
at school, I'm wondering, do the mental health professionals at schools see it helping educators in the same ways where they're talking amongst themselves about the things that are sharing and able to
yeah.
share with each other the same way you're sharing outside of your immediately family group with the relatives? Are they taking their things and sharing them with other educators in the school and using it as a tool to collaborate?
Yeah. I think there's so many cool things they could do with this at the end of the day, right? And for us, I mean, the risk of any startup is focusing on too many different problems, right? Even this whole like consumer of families, like showing other family members, right? Like at the core, what we do is that we have to focus on creating a very safe and private environment for teachers to show these moments with families, to share them with family members, right? But from that comes so many different things, right? Like earlier we talked about reinforcing learning, right? But
Yeah.
the whole like family connection piece, right? But I think you're absolutely right, where teachers also document a lot of their work, right? For professional reasons, any of those things, where Daisy could be a way where they can share those things with other educators. And I think that's one of the big things is that It's like, how do we knock down walls in classrooms for all teachers to collaborate together? And I think that's a big part of what Daisy does. And but we have to be very careful, right? Why our teachers use Daisy and why they share so much, they feel safe to share so much, is they know it's a closed environment. Like, we don't actually allow parents to take any of this content and save it to their own devices. And part of that is just the whole privacy component of it. But like, we've had teachers and we've had parents that reach out to us like, hey, that would be a really cool feature. I understand your privacy issues, but maybe allow the teacher to toggle what can be shared and what can't be shared, right? Because what you said is very true, right? Like, teachers create a lot of these moments where it's like, hey, I would love to be able to show one of my teacher friends that teach first grade this lesson that I came up with, right? And maybe those are things that we can implement down the road, but at its core right now, it's about sparking this like daily joy in the classroom that doesn't get seen by families, right? So
Yeah, that's like absolutely crucial. And like I keep, doing that thing that you don't like, where I'm trying to go different directions with it. But it's so awesome that it
but
almost strikes me as like an early indicator of what's like mental health levels going on
yes.
at. And as a parent, maybe you're seeing some warning flags where, hey, there's all this cool stuff happening at school and your kid should be excited and ranting about
Yeah.
how awesome their day was, but they're not talking about any of it. And or my child is always talking about these certain activities, but they never bring up this one. I wonder if they're struggling and they don't feel
Yeah.
confident. There's so many of those little things there beyond what did you do today, but what did
It,
you
it,
do today and how did it impact you and how is it still impacting you and what
if
can
you
we do? It's awesome.
I think when we first met, Jim, I kind of told you, right? Like, if you look at what we do, right, you're like, oh, it's photos and videos. That's the vehicle to drive the action that we want, which is to get parents to talk to their kids, for teachers to have better relationships with their families, right? To bring that closeness back into classrooms, right? But to do it in a way where it's very simple and empowering on both sides, where for us, you're absolutely right with that. It's about sparking more of those conversations where you might not have those conversations before, but now because of Daisy, you're talking more about it. But more importantly, these kids are proud to tell their parents, "Hey, mom, dad, guess what we did today? Oh, that story right there. Yes, we're doing this math game on the board. The premise of the math game was X, Y, and Z. My team won, or my team didn't get a chance to go up there and play." There's so many nuggets that can be taken out of this content, right? That drives engagement, that drives this relationship. But even going back to what you're saying about like going all these different ways, and we can, right? One thing, like, and it goes back to like being a startup, you're just focused, but you're thinking about all these supplemental benefits that come from Daisy, right? Let's talk about absenteeism, right? That's a topic that it's like top of mind, right? And I'm very careful of like the what Daisy can do, and some of the things that people can say about it. It's right, like it's all about positive behavior at the end of the day, right? Like, that's what we're trying to do with Daisy. But from when we talk to teachers, it's one of those things where like it should be a very free moment. It's for teachers to decide like, hey, this is what something I don't want them to overshare this content. But I think a lot of times kids are proud to like, hey, this is my day. I want to be a part of it, right? And it drives them to be more engaged in just their daily activity in the classroom. Does it make them do better in classes? And those are all data points that we can like uncover over time when we talk to our teachers, right? And so far, everyone's like, it's funny how many of these kids just want to like, present what they're doing, and just taking initiative over like over the school day versus before, where it's like, school is fine, I did nothing, right? Like, I don't really care about it, right? Another fun thing is like, teachers telling us where kids might be absent because they're sick or something else might come up, and we can basically make them feel like they're a part of that classroom in that way, right? There's all these health benefits that come from what we're doing as well too. So
Yeah. What's the most powerful bit of feedback you've gotten from the teachers who are testing it out right now?
the most powerful feedback that we've gotten really is just, it's more so all the teachers answer the same way, right? And sometimes it blows people in mind because they're like, look, it revolves around just how simplistic it is to use Daisy, right? Because I think like, right, teachers every day, they're presented with so many different options, so many different tools. And I think sometimes when they see a Daisy story, because sometimes they're like, hey, I like the concept of this, but I'm not really sure what to actually share. I might share with them a sample class story from another teacher. They're like, oh, wow, that must took a lot of time to like do this. I'm like, no, it actually took seconds of their day, right? Listen from all these other teachers, right? And like we did this like whole internal like teacher interview like with a lot of the beta teachers, and everyone just talks about simplicity, ease of use, but most importantly, how it just create a better community with their parents. right? And when you interview parents, that's the emotional trigger, right? That's the part where, hey, Simon, like, I kid you not, like, my kid would come home and never talk to me about what happened, but it really helped elevate our relationship, right? And that's been one of the more powerful things you hear from like working parents, right? We're no longer, for most part, it's not, one person working as a dual income household for a lot of people, right? And it's about, hey, I'm away for a business trip, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, I'm not able to be there, but I feel like I'm there because of Daisy. That's why we created this, right? And that's actually, for me, it ties back to like what Daisy means to me, because that's what the issues I faced as a student growing up was my parents weren't able to be present, right? And this doesn't
Yeah,
replace in
that makes
person, like for them showing
perfect
up, but
sense. Perfect
it gives them
sense.
something, right? And then hopefully they can talk about it. So
Yeah, I love that. Part of like what I see also is I feel like you're building this because, because you're a father and
yeah,
you see where you want to be at the dinner table and what the
yeah,
conversations that you want to have, and you don't want to wait for someone else to potentially build it or not. Like, you want to ensure that your family's set up for success and in building and growing together. And I think that's such a cool motivation. I can just see in you, like, you're doing it because your family who raised you, and then now that you're in that position, like out of appreciation, you're gonna bridge that gap and make it happen.
I think
That's
I
so awesome.
it ties back to my own upbringing. It ties back to other I mean, not even first generation. Like, let's just tell anyone, right? Like, we all know the people growing up that their parents weren't present, right? It's empowering those families, right? Even like when I worked on Wall Street, we're always traveling around, working late nights at the office, right? Like, people are away from their kids. That's a very universal problem that we have as humans, right? Is that we have kids, right? We have to support those kids, and there's that guilt side of things, right? And for me, I truly just care about this problem, right? And I'm one of those people where I'm very pro just like, how can we shower teachers with love and appreciation? Because it's really sad. I mean, like, I'm sure you uncovered in past episodes where just like, like just the morale of teachers and the issues and all those other things. And and going back to before, like, we're not that one solution that's gonna fix everything, but we're doing our tiny part to hopefully move it in the right direction where, for the parents that don't understand what happened in the classroom, and sometimes there's that misunderstanding, right? Maybe we can bridge that gap for them, right? And maybe we can make them feel closer to the school, right? And that's been one of the more fun things to see too, right? Where, this might make complete sense for private schools, charter schools, but like public schools, right? Like, it's that universal problem that we're seeing, right? It doesn't matter who you are at the end of the day, right? Like, you want to be engaged with your kids, right? And you want to give teachers the appreciation and the credit that they deserve for all that they do.
Yeah, that's one of the things our fellowship programs really uncovered is just that combating burnout, improving teacher retention, reducing absenteeism in the classroom are
Yeah.
probably the three big pillars that we need to really address first in humanizing learning, and the rest, everything else is pretty much downstream from that, I think. uh, so when we talk about the power that the Daisy app can have for families at home, for educators in the classroom, for administrators who want happy educators in the schools, there's really one last bridge, which is like community. And are there any thoughts into how the app can play into community as well? Because it's like a tough thing to do with data integrity and privacy,
Yeah.
but there's something beautiful there to empowering the educators to be shined out in the community and bridge that gap there. Is there any thoughts around that?
I think there's a fun way that you can do it. I think the most obvious one is just a knowledge share for teachers, right? If there is a lesson in any of those things, and that runs into like the privacy issues of like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm taking a very intimate moment in my classroom to share it for the rest of the world, and I'm not going to get into the issues that online communities have about like oversharing and all those other things because we're this private space. But something I go back on, and Jim and I, like, we've had this conversation many times, and I said it before, was how do you celebrate teachers? How do you make them feel empowered by their day? Unfortunately, like, we live in a world now where, like, there's a lot of people that aren't becoming teachers, and that's actually a huge issue for us, right? And at its core, it's about celebrating what teachers do or the meaningful moments why they teach. I think there's a really fun way to build community around that, right? Spotlighting teachers or having teachers uplift one another, find ways to support, right? We come up with different, like, hey, like, how should we be on social media? Should we start a whole series where every single day we just spark one daily wellness question for teachers to answer? Like, what made you laugh today? What was your, like, oh no moment, or any of those things? And finding ways for teacher to uplift each other is the critical part of it, right? I think, unfortunately, like, and this is, it's widely known, right, where a lot of times, like, teachers feel siloed in their own in their own schools, right? And having them go out, meet other like-minded teachers, maybe the same grade, this, or teaching the same subject, and helping them learn and grow together, right? But helping them uplift, right? And I hope Daisy could be that platform for them, right? A little fun thing too is, right, like, Daisy over time will be that journal, that portfolio of their life's work for them, right? Imagine I'm a first year teacher joining Daisy. I can go back in time to see what did I do my first day of teaching, like, more, more practical, like, hey, I did this lesson last year. Let me go back and reflect on it, or go see what I did, so I know what to do this year for it, right? We can be that archive for teachers in that way, right? And I think at its core, it goes back to the whole community piece. It's like, we're all those joyful learning moments throughout a teacher's career, right? What I've seen so far, just like teachers finding ways to uplift each other, to reach out to each other, and building communities through that, right? So, yeah.
When a Daisy teacher retires after X amount of years, we're gonna cut this part out, but we should do like something cool where, like, you can send them like a jump drive with like all their like entire history on it, and like a AI edited presentation or something. That'd be like a really cool reward.
You can add this back in, but, like, I think at its core, right, you think about the spaces, right? Like, we keep safe memories at the end of the day, right? I think there's a really interesting way where, right, once again, we don't use AI to replace stuff, but how do we make it simpler for teachers, right, to organize all this stuff? Or if they're like, hey, at the end of the year, I want to create a little, like, highlight reel of, like, Michael's day, or Michael's year in first grade, or, or this is our year in first grade. Here's all our field trips. They can quickly do it on Daisy to, like, to do a lot of that work that doesn't take time of, like, hey, let me go get that thumb drive out. Let me get all those photos. Let me put them all into a Google Drive and do it. You can really augment that. And that would be a cool experience for them down the road.
Yeah. That would be super awesome for an educator who wants to get involved and experience the app for themselves, or for a district who wants to get involved. What's the best approach for that?
For teachers directly, you can go straight to the App Store, iOS or Android, the Google Play Store. You can search Daisy, and that's spelled Daysee. And you can download the app and use. You can go on our website, www.daisyapp.com, or you can reach out to me directly. My email is simon@daisyApp.com. I can obviously work with teachers to help get them on board. But as you mentioned, it should be pretty straightforward once you download the app and use to get onto it. But it's always good to, if you want to reach out to me, I can kind of walk you through the different use cases, or understand really how to really use it in your classroom this school year. So, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll put your LinkedIn in the description, and
Yeah.
website and everything, so people can get in contact with you. Simon, is there anything else?
At the end of the day, I want, obviously, as many teachers to be on this as possible, right? Because I believe it's an amazing tool for teachers, for families, and for students. But to really focus on really the three things that we really do, right, is we celebrate teachers and highlight their impact, right? Number two is that we engage families, right, by deepening their connection at home. And we do all those things to, obviously, number three is to empower students, right? And we just happen to do all those things through photos and videos, right, for classrooms. Right. And that's what Daisy is. And we really built it in a way that I believe shouldn't feel like work for teachers, should feel safe. It's simple, but yet super joyful and fun to use. Right.
Love the term thinkering, and we'll definitely use it in my classroom. The kids will love it.
This is where we can be that peer support network with each other. When the big picture clicks, it's beautiful when you get administrators and teachers together.
You can't be a leader of other people if you can't first lead yourself, right?
Helps the educator have a very clear and structured framework.
Becomes this real
community hub, if you're a great educator, you're looking for the most powerful moment. Can we inspire kids to believe that the world needs who they were made to be?
I hope you guys continue to uphold that legacy and continue, finding kids like you.